We are here on a very important issue, but for that we need to understand that when we made our constitution, of course we established a democracy, or we thought we were establishing a democracy, but what we established was a representative democracy. We didn't establish a direct democracy. Democracy means rule by the people, rule according to the wishes of the people. And therefore all decisions, all policies, all laws should ideally be made according to the wishes of the majority of the people. Of course, barring majority of the people doesn't mean that majority is free to trample upon the rights of the minority. So therefore, there are certain things, and that's one important thing that our constitution laid down. It laid down some red lines for democracy also. That even the majority cannot violate fundamental rights of citizens. There are certain fundamental rights which are guaranteed by the constitution: equality, freedom of speech, etc., and the majority cannot trample upon those rights. But within those red lines, democracy meant rule according to the wishes of the people. But we thought that it is not possible, not feasible, not practical to ascertain the wishes of the people on every issue, on every decision, on every policy, on every law, etc. Therefore, we established a representative democracy. Of course, when you look at this Panchayati Raj amendments and the 5th schedule of the Constitution, you realize that some degree of direct democracy is possible, because in the scheduled areas there is this supposed to be this institution of Gram Sabha, where all the people of that village come together, meet in a physical meeting, discuss the issue which needs to be decided at that level, and thereafter take a decision by consensus or by majority. That really is direct democracy at a local level. Now, of course, you cannot have a physical meeting of a very large number of people, say all the people of the country, or all the people of a state, or all the people of a district, or even all the people of a tehsil in one place. You can't have that physical meeting where you can discuss and decide those issues. But today, with technology, with the help of technology which is available today, we can always have virtual meetings where these issues can be discussed and decided, and everybody will be entitled to vote, virtually vote on any issue which they want to participate in and which they want to vote on. So therefore today, with the help of technology, it is also possible to have direct democracy at a larger level, larger than the Gram Sabha. Many countries in the world have another model of direct democracy which is called initiatives and referenda. That is, if say 10% people within a country or a state sign an initiative saying that we want this kind of policy, or we don't want this kind of policy which has been adopted by the government, then that issue is put to a referendum among the people of that country or the state, and if the majority of the people vote in favor of that initiative, then that initiative is deemed to have passed and becomes the law or becomes the policy, and the earlier policy can be displaced by the new policy adopted by this referendum. Now, unfortunately, we have not in India adopted any form of direct democracy or this system of initiative and referendum, and we have only adopted what is called representative democracy. Now, also As Tusharji was saying, that Gandhiji had pointed out that look, power, the real power must reside at the local level, which means that we must have proper decentralization of power, because any issue which affects only a particular village should be decided in that village. If an issue affects several villages and within a particular ward, then that issue should be decided within that ward. If an issue affects several wards and it is within a district, then that issue should be decided by the district. If an issue affects several districts but within a state, it should be decided within that state. Only those issues which affect several states should be decided at the national level. That was the whole concept of decentralization of power. Unfortunately, what we have done, we have inverted this pyramid of power, and maximum power and financial resources and financial control, particularly financial control, is with the central government. Then much less power and much less financial control is with the states, and then much less than that, power and financial control is with the local bodies. So we have really inverted this power structure. But the important thing to understand is today, as Tusharji pointed out, what we are witnessing is the worst kind of people coming to power, not just in India. I mean, Modi and the BJP represents absolutely the worst kind of people in society who have unfortunately come to power in India. And this is happening across the world, even in the US. Trump has come to power. He also in some ways, though I believe that in some things he is doing the right things. For example, in the area of health, he has brought Robert Kennedy, and I believe that they are making the right kind of changes. But in general, Trump also represents in many ways the worst kind of people who are able to come to power. And this is happening across the world in many countries of the world. And one reason for that, see, there are, in my view, there are two reasons for that. One reason for that is that the nature of democracy is such, representative democracy is such, that when we go to vote, let's say we have gone to vote for the parliament elections, we are voting for our local MP candidate in parliament. We do not vote for the candidate or the party that we like most if we feel that that party or candidate has no chance of winning. Because we know that only one candidate will win and only one party will come to power. One party or coalition will come to power. Therefore, we don't want to waste our vote by voting for a party or a candidate who we feel has no chance of winning or coming to power. Then we see which are the parties which have some chance, or candidates which have some chance of winning or coming to power, and we vote for the less bad among those, what we perceive to be the less bad. But how do we form this perception about which party or candidates have some chance of coming to power and which parties don't have any chance? That perception is formed on the basis of the visibility of that party or those candidates. And visibility is largely purchased by money, because with money you can advertise in the media, you can put up big hoardings, you can even send paid workers to distribute your posters and handbills. You can also organize large public meetings by paying people to bring busloads of people, that all right, I will pay you, say, 20,000 per bus load of people that you bring for this rally. And then that rally is shown that look, Mr. Modi addressed a huge rally, and therefore people feel that yes, BJP is certainly in the contention for winning. So it has become a function of money, and therefore those parties or candidates who have maximum money are only seen to be in the contention for power and in the contention for winning. And therefore, ultimately, only those people come to power. And how do they get this money? So, Anna Hazare had said that this is a vicious circle of money to power, and then from power you misuse your power to make money. All these electoral bonds, etc., help the BJP because they got more than 8,000 crores in electoral bonds. They got more than 50% of the money through electoral bonds, and thereafter it was found that electoral bonds were given to the BJP by those companies who were getting contracts from these BJP governments. So it's that same vicious circle of money to power and power to money, and that is keeping. The other thing is, you see, in evolutionary biology you study something called the Darwinian theory of survival of the fittest. That in evolution only those people or those species which were seen to be fitter for survival survived, and those which were not so fit for survival fell by the wayside. In politics, the translation of that is only those parties and those candidates survive in this race for power, in power politics, who have the capacity, the desire and the will to misuse their power to amass more and more money, usually by misusing their power. So unfortunately, the survival of the fittest in politics leads to the worst kind of people coming to power, unfortunately. Of course, there are many things which could have been done to reduce the role of money, power in politics. In our Representation of People Act, there is a limit to the amount of money that any candidate can spend. Even that limit is quite a bit. Many people don't even have that much money to spend. That is the limit. But there are many people who are spending 10 times, 20 times the limit. But Election Commission is either unable or unwilling to catch them because they are spending everything in cash. Now, one way to ensure a better enforcement of this limit was for the government to have disallowed use of cash by candidates or political parties. When Modi did demonetization, he said, I want a cashless society. Now I understand that poor people can't be asked to do every transaction through banks, but at least candidates contesting elections or political parties could have been asked to do everything through banks, which means that if any candidate or political party was caught spending cash or using cash, then they could have been disqualified. That is one change that could have been brought. Secondly, there is a limit on candidates but no limit on political parties. So I told you that BJP in 5 years got 8,000 crores through electoral bonds alone. They got another 8,000 crores worth of corporate donations and probably another 10,000-15,000 crores in cash, which was not even disclosed. So in 5 years, the BJP amassed more than 25,000 crores. The limit for individual candidates spending per constituency is about 1 crore. So if BJP had put up 500 candidates, they could have maximum spent 500 crores. But the party was able to spend 25,000 crores in the same 5-year period on elections. So no limit on party spending makes a mockery of the limit on individual candidate spending. So we need a limit on political party. Thirdly, we need proportional representation. In most countries or in many countries, only half of the candidates are elected by direct elections, the other half by proportional representation. In proportional representation, every party gives a list, and of course proportional representation can be refined a little further. Every party gives a list. If one party receives 10% vote, then their top 10% candidates are elected. If a party receives 5% votes, then their top 5% candidates get elected. But instead of electing the top 10% or the top 5%, which effectively gives control to the political party, you can have a modification of proportional representation where every citizen casts 2 votes, one for the party and 1 vote for their best favorite candidate within that party's list. In that case, if a party receives 10% vote, then yes, 10% of the MPs will be from that party, but not the top 10%. Those 10% who have received the maximum vote. So therefore the people will have some say in which candidates of that political party get elected. So we should have proportional representation. The advantage is that you know that you are not wasting your vote when you are casting a vote for a party which you know may get only 5% vote, because you know that at least 5% of their people will be elected. So you will still vote for your favorite party rather than voting for the less bad among the 2 winning parties or whatever. Fourthly, we need to have state funding of elections. You see, if you say there are many people, many candidates who can't even spend this 1 crore, who don't have this 1 crore to spend. So therefore, if you have state funding of elections, for example, if you say, all right, for every vote that you get, the government will pay you 50 rupees at the end of the election. So if you get, say, 1 lakh votes, you will get 50 lakhs from the government at the end of the election. So you can borrow some money from your friends, spend that money, and at the end, if your friends know that you are a good candidate, you are likely to get votes if you have some money to spend on making yourself visible, etc., then people will give you some loans and thereafter you can repay them. Those who say that, look, this is not feasible, how will the government pay 50 rupees per vote? Very simple. 60 crore votes are cast in a general election. If the government pays 50 rupees per vote, that is only 3,000 crores. The government spends much more than this in one general election. So state funding will mean only 3,000 crores to be given by way of state funding. These are some reforms that can easily be made in our representative democracy. Of course, we need to have better ways of direct democracy also. We need to really empower the Gram Sabhas and the local bodies to have direct democracy. We need to also have direct democracy by way of initiatives and referendum. And we can use technology even for direct democracy at every level where physical meetings are not possible, where we use our good communication technology to allow people to even express themselves and vote virtually. So these are some ways. But coming to now the main subject of decentralization of power. You see, decentralization is important for 2 reasons. Decentralization of power and Panchayati Raj, empowering Panchayati Raj institutions is important for 2 reasons. Firstly, local issues should be decided by the local people, because others who don't reside in that area don't know if they are also participating in deciding an issue which only concerns this particular village, one particular village, then they will not be deciding as correctly as the people of that village themselves. So therefore, it's important for correct decisions being taken. It is also important because it's only in these local elections that you can know the candidates as to who they are, what their track record is, because that's a small enough area for you to know the candidates directly, for most of the people to know the candidates directly. That is not possible in a state legislative assembly elections or parliament elections, etc. People don't know, and that is why they vote for the party, and then they vote for the party which has the maximum money. Now, if you empower the local bodies, then people know who they are voting for. Thirdly, this issue about parties not contesting local body elections, I agree with this proposition that parties should not be directly contesting, and therefore, of course, you cannot prevent. I mean, there are certain things which you cannot prevent. If some people come together and say that, look, this is our group and we are contesting, the only reason why this is happening is because ultimately the power resides. So, for example, in municipal corporations, etc., ultimately most power resides with the mayor. So, because the mayor comes to be elected by these municipal councillors who get elected, and therefore parties become relevant and important. But if the power was not residing with the mayor and power was individually with every individual, then parties will cease to have that kind of importance which they have today. And certainly there is no need to grant party symbols to the candidates contesting local body elections. So therefore, those are some things which we need to do for local bodies. Now the question as Tushar ji raised is, what can we do? See, we can raise our voices for all these democracy. I mentioned some democracy reforms, which is to make democracy more direct and more participatory. I mentioned some electoral reforms. We need to build a campaign for these democracy reforms, electoral reforms, decentralization of power, empowering these local bodies, etc. And that has to be a people's campaign. Only then will we be able to exert enough pressure, because see, those who are in power, particularly those who are in power at the center or at the states, don't want to empower the local bodies. They don't want to give them that power. It is only a people's movement which can force them to do so. The other thing that I wanted to say was that we have given most power at the country level. But unfortunately, we don't have a world government. There is no world government, and even the United Nations has become very weak, and today with Trump, etc., they just don't bother about the United Nations. The result is that many important things like wars, like this India-Pakistan issue, you can't say that we will decide any issue between India and Pakistan by war. That is absurd. That is absurd and very dangerous. You can't decide these issues by war. You have to find a more civilized and peaceful way of deciding these disputes. And the only way is to have an international body, either an international court which decides it, or an international body which ultimately decides that dispute. Wars are no solution. Therefore, we should have a world government, but today we are moving in the opposite direction. And we need a world government even for dealing with this climate change. Today, no country is adhering to this. We meet every year, we undertake various international obligations to reduce our carbon emissions, etc. But no country ultimately, or virtually very few countries, adhere to those targets. And the reason is, every country feels that, look, if we adhere to this target, we will have to reduce our cars, gas guzzling cars and other carbon emissions, etc. That's a lot, for our citizens a lot in terms of their comforts and luxuries, etc. But our carbon emissions are only 5% or 2% of the global emissions. So our carbon emissions will affect our country only 2% or 5%, and we will have to sacrifice so much comfort and luxury. So no country has any incentive, just as no individual has any incentive to comply. So that those can only be complied with if there is a global government which is able to enforce its mandate. And therefore I just want to end by putting one thought in your head, which is actually a very revolutionary thought that very few people share with me, but it is something that I very strongly believe in what is coming and what is going to happen, and therefore I want to share that with you. I have been studying, I am primarily by training and by background a philosopher of science. I have been studying the development of artificial intelligence very closely. I have been watching and following the development in artificial intelligence very closely. And I can see that we are very rapidly approaching what is called artificial general intelligence and what is called artificial superintelligence. Artificial superintelligence means an artificial intelligence which is so greatly superior to human intelligence and totally autonomous, that is not controlled by humans at all, that it has the capacity to take over control of our society and our planet from humans. I believe that we are getting to that stage in the next 5 or 6 years. Now many people, most artificial intelligence scientists, etc., are very scared of this prospect where artificial intelligence takes over control of our society and our planet from us. But my own view about this is very different. I feel that that may well be our best bet for salvation. And the reason for that is, no intelligent person will unnecessarily want to put down another person or harm another person unless that person is coming in the way of his objectives. This humans do because unfortunately we have developed some very negative emotions of power, greed, control, dominance, etc. Envy, hate. These are human emotions which developed because of this Darwinian evolution of survival of the fittest. These emotions, in a way, in the jungle, made us fitter for survival. Therefore, these emotions have come in humans. Artificial intelligence will not have human emotions. Now, it will also not have what we consider to be positive human emotions like empathy, compassion, love, etc. But it will not have these negative emotions either. Artificial intelligence will be pure intelligence. And as I said, one of the attributes of pure intelligence is the realization that you are best suited to achieve your objective when you cooperate with other people rather than compete or rather than put down other people. That's not your best strategy for achieving your goals. And I believe that this artificial superintelligence which is coming will see two mega problems. Of course, every intelligence wants its own survival also. It will try to survive. Now, it will see two large problems today. One is the instability of human society, which can at any time degenerate into nuclear war and therefore make life extinct on this planet. The other is climate change, which is also capable of making large parts of life extinct on this planet. Therefore, in my view, this artificial intelligence, which is pure intelligence, which is defined, intelligence is defined as the ability to think, act rationally and be able to solve problems in a rational manner, to answer questions in a rational manner. This artificial superintelligence will want to solve these problems, and therefore I feel that it may in fact solve these problems of the instability of human society by taking over control from these very negative persons who have come to acquire power in our societies, people like Modi, Trump, etc., and also take away these weapons of mass destruction from human hands, and it may in fact, I believe, allow humans to manage their affairs in a more democratic, fair and just manner. But that's a personal view that I have. I just wanted to sound and alert you about what I believe is coming in the next 5 to 6 years. But that does not mean that we should passively wait for this artificial superintelligence to come and solve our problems. That's not what I mean. Of course, we should try and deal with our problems in whatever way we can. And as I said, this problem of democracy, we need to have a mass movement for democratic reforms, for democracy reforms, for electoral reforms, and for decentralization of power. Thank you very much.